The startup investment landscape is changing, and world-class companies are being built outside of Silicon Valley. We find them, talk with them, and discuss the upside of investing in them. Welcome to Upside. Woo!
Eric, we did it. We made it through the 2020 election. We have a president-elect.
And we have my 30th birthday coming up.
And we have your 30th birthday coming up, which I know because I know it inherently. I have it on my calendar, and not because we've already recorded one take of this and you told me it was your birthday.
Mm-hmm. And when I told you that, did you even do you even know what the date is, even though you know it's coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know what the date is.
Yeah. Insert cut here while Jay types frantically.
Do I have it?
No, dude, I only turned 30 twice, so no big deal.
I don't have it. I have the date of your wedding as it was supposed to be.
Did you get the change the date in the mail?
No, I did not get a change the date in the mail.
Oh, well, it should be there any minute now.
Well, 2021 is going to be a big year because you're going to turn 31 in 2021. You're going to get married. We're going to have a new president, theoretically. We'll see how this all plays out. It's been a nightmare week for media. So let's talk about things we like about media and things we're excited about in media.
I'm excited about a lot in media, to be honest. I think that we are in a changing time for media. I think that you see that with the premiums that people are putting on acquisitions like Morning Brew. I think that a lot of these kind of legacy media players are looking to the future with Penn National and Barstool, with Morning Brew, there's just a lot going on. To be honest, it's almost like too much to bring into one little fold here.
And you're always on top of it more than I am. Like, you were the one that showed me what the hustle was. And then you were talking about Morning Brew before I knew anyone else was. You were really talking about the way that Barstool structured their organization before anyone that I knew. And you just recently started showing me YouTube talk shows, which are a real quick way to lose an afternoon. So you're on this, and that has led to now a new project for the Up Company, our umbrella over Upside. And I'm excited about it. And it's just about ready to go.
Yeah, we're launching 2 new podcasts, Jay. If this wasn't enough work, let's add 2 more. So the first one is called When Pigs Fly, and it is a Cincinnati-based podcast focusing on emerging businesses. And I classify those as, it could be startups, it could be franchises, it could be brands, anything that can scale past a locale. And then the second one is The Lay of the Land, which is a podcast that's mapping the Cleveland ecosystem. Our 4 new hosts, Jay. So it won't be you and I on the mics.
We're not on the mics for these new podcasts that are launching in the next 2 months?
No, we are not. I don't think our girlfriends and fiancés would appreciate you and I spending any more time together than we already do.
And the listeners probably get enough of us too.
That's a good point. So we have Allie and Jeff and Tagan and Patrick, and you hear a lot more from them in the coming days, weeks, and months as they launch their own podcasts on the Upside Network.
Yeah, we will share the trailers for those shows. We'll share a little bit of a launch episode for each of them. But we want to go behind the scenes a little bit here and talk about this network that Eric has really been building over the last couple months for us that is hosting these shows. Because as you just told you, we are not the hosts of these shows. We are helping make them possible. So Eric, why are we doing that? Why do these 2 shows need us? Why do they need the Upside Network?
I think when we started this podcast, we actually learned a lot more. We learned a lot about this, and it hasn't been just months that we've been building this concept. I think the first time I sent you a note about the potential for an Upside Network was about 3 months into us actually having Upside. Like, we had just created our Slack. We were still new, and I was already thinking, man, I could see how this works. And one thing that I didn't understand at that point was the economics and the amount of work it takes to launch a local podcast and the trade-off for all of the time that you spend launching a local podcast and probably losing money doing it. So if you live in a city and you're a listener, you've probably seen a host of podcasts that are focused on startups or small business or local podcasts, or maybe they're launched by your local chamber, or maybe they're launched by a local nonprofit. Come and go. And the truth is that they're really hard to maintain locally unless you have a repeatable playbook to launch those podcasts, a structure to run those podcasts, and a way to let the hosts focus on being great hosts, not on business owners who have to deal with all of the additional work that goes with running a podcast.
Yeah. And to give a little color to that, to launch a podcast, you have the obvious upfront cost of equipment. And now it can be a little bit cheaper because a lot of people are doing it remotely. So you need to pay for your mic, your equipment, and then you kind of have the guests do whatever they want. For local podcasts, a lot of them are done in person. So you're talking about a 2-person setup, maybe more. If that's the case, you need a recording space, pay for an editor, or invest a lot of your own time to do it. So we usually see 2 flavors of local podcasts, one being like the community builder, grassroots type of person who wants to do it because they just love their city. The other person kind of being like you said, like from the chamber. Both those are hard to maintain because the individual, it's a lot of time and even money to do it. And it's kind of a thankless job in the beginning. And the chamber, who may have the resources to do it, but may have unrealistic expectations of how quickly it takes off and will quickly scrap the project.
Yeah, one of the things with any enterprise launching a podcast, and we've seen this over the last 3 years, Jay, is that there's always something else that's going to come along that is the new thing that we should allocate our experimental budget to. So if you have a company and 10 years ago, they launched a blog, and then 5 years ago, they launched a YouTube channel, and then 3 years ago, they launched a podcast, and now today they're launching a TikTok channel, the allocation of resources, both financial and time resources, is going to veer away from the thing that's not working. And unless that podcast was a massive hit like A16Z's podcast, it's very rare that that thing is going to continue into perpetuity as if it was a standalone podcast.
And for the individual, the actual act of talking to people and recording the podcast is the easiest, shortest amount of time that goes into the process of producing a show. The actual production, editing, publishing, finding advertisers to support the show, all of that takes up way more time than actual interviewing. And so you stepped in, you said, I thought we could make a way to support these local, quote unquote, indie podcasters by doing some of the back office stuff, making that process easier and let them do what they do best, which is use their relationships, cultivate relationships, get on the mic and have some good conversations.
Yeah, and we're not looking explicitly at people who have podcasts currently. I call them like the rising stars. So if you think about in the sports world, we've talked a little bit about Barstool's business model, and I think Erica Nardini is like one of the best CEOs probably of the past decade, maybe longer. What Barstool does is they find kind of rising stars who are already doing this. We're kind of going a little bit earlier than that. We're looking for individuals who maybe don't have a podcast, but have demonstrated some aspect of hustle or interest in building their network and their local community, in creating and telling stories. There's a lot of different ways you can get it, but I want to find the people who are not the Stephen A. Smiths who are going to have to pay millions and millions of dollars to launch a podcast. I don't want the Ben Gilberts of Acquired to do one about Seattle because he's already a known entity. He already has a set of incentives. But if I could find the next Ben Gilbert of Seattle and accelerate his path to becoming Ben Gilbert via helping him with a podcast that has a upside, nationally branded backing and a playbook to get him from 0 to 1 faster than he could himself, and 1 to 2 faster, and 2 to 3 faster, then I think that's the kind of people we want to find, is people with hustle, determination, and who want to grow.
And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, ooh, that sounds interesting, that might be me, reach out to us. Let us know, because our first 2 shows that Eric mentioned are in Cleveland and Cincinnati because they're both close to us. We can go and meet these people. We can build our own playbook of helping onboard new shows and helping them set it up. We're really proud of the trailers that these shows are putting out. We think that the quality of these shows, because they had the benefit of working with Eric and our engineer Nathan to come in and help them get started on the right foot, is a huge, huge benefit of what we're trying to do here. And ultimately, we can provide that to podcasters, individuals in communities across the country. So if that's you, email us hello@upside.fm or tweet at us @upsidefm and let us know. Eric, how did you find these 4 that we're talking with now?
Man, the crazy world of Twitter. I literally wrote a job description, said, hey, here's this rev share 1099-ish agreement. Here's kind of what we're thinking. This is not final. This is going to be a very beta experiment. So there's a lot of you working with us working with you. Posted it on Twitter, and I had a ton of people reach out with, you should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. Here's an intro to this person. A bunch of people reached out directly and said, this sounds like me. And we interviewed 27 people in May and June of 2020. And we kind of whittled those down, played a little matchmaker, figured out through a couple more conversations who was really interested, who was just kind of interested. And then we came up with our 4 co-hosts. And honestly, it was a lot more art than science, but we were trying to pair people with different backgrounds, different opinions, different viewpoints so that we didn't have 2 of the same person on the mic as a co-host. And I think we did a really awesome job based on the last 6 months of working with each of these co-hosts to create their vision for what their podcast looks like. As you'll notice at what I mentioned at the beginning, these are not Upside Cleveland podcasts. They are different. So Lay of the Land has its own artwork. When Pigs Fly has its own artwork, has its own vibe, it has its own feel, has its own persona. And that's what we want, because people, when they think local, want to feel local. Upside provides a national medium to share the local podcast, though.
Yeah, so these shows have their own feed, their own hosts, their own feel. Eric's given them a lot of creative freedom to structure things as they want. We've just helped them craft that concept and really get it nailed down, and given them the benefit of the process that we've built over the last few years, both from a procedural standpoint and also helping to do the actual production on the back end. We're also helping with advertisers on that front. So again, if you're listening to this, you're like, this is interesting, I want to talk to you guys. Let us know. So you mentioned that Upside can have this national lens for these different cities, and we've touched something like 70 different cities across the country. We've done a couple episodes in Cincinnati, a couple episodes in Cleveland, not companies, but a couple episodes. It's just really difficult for us to get a layer of depth in any one ecosystem. We kind of want to be the hype podcast for most of the country, but we can't go super, super deep. So why have individual shows versus just have hosts that are putting localized shows into the Upside feed?
I just don't think that scales as well. I think that if we're looking at how big this opportunity is, which is one of our 4 questions on our own deal memos, Jay, how about that?
There we go.
Little podception there.
What do we think about the founders?
Well, that Jay guy kind of stinks. So I think that if we look at the opportunity here, we have a city ranking list, and that has what their VC rank is, what their population rank is, what their growth rank is, what their population demographics are, a bunch of different other rankings from other sources. And I think we came up with 76 cities that we think have a healthy enough business environment in the United States that they could support a podcast like this that is done weekly. If we don't focus specifically on startups, but focus on the general business ecosystem, specifically in that emerging business space. So if you think about 76 of those on the Upside feed, you can imagine the unsubscribe button gets pretty easy to tap pretty quickly, because there's 75 plus shows per week that are not interesting to you. So if we put these on different feeds, one, we have differentiated and we can focus specifically on those local markets. So if we launch something in Las Vegas, that people who are interested in the Las Vegas business ecosystem can tune in specifically to that show. Upside itself will stay high level. The way that we describe, I always think this is funny, because the way that we describe a completed city on Upside is when we have 3 companies, 2 investors, and 1 community builder. And we've done that a total of 1 time. If we did everything perfectly, we would do this over the course of 10 years. That's how long it would take us to do this.
And then our completed city has 6 interviews.
Yeah. So by doing this, we have the ability to go deep. With Upside, we have the ability to go broad. With these individual shows, we have the ability to go deep. And that's what I'm really excited about, because we can bring some of that depth up to the top level at Upside.
And what I'm excited about is, while Upside has been a part of the growing movement of, hey, there's opportunity across the country, there's opportunity everywhere, we're bringing awareness to that opportunity. These localized shows can really empower and lift up communities. This is something where people can get behind their own city and see, oh, there's things happening here. I want to be a part of that. and plug in and support it and grow those individual cities more quickly. Upside, focusing so broadly, will never be able to have that type of impact alone on one city. And these shows genuinely can, we think. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people there's this idea of like hardcore fans versus casual fans and how they overlap. And I think a lot of people are hardcore fans of their own cities and casual fans of this movement that's happening outside of Silicon Valley. So if we can have more people be attuned to their local business climate, and this is another reason I think that we need a outsider here, or a rising star, because if we put someone who has a embedded interest in these communities, you're just going to hear the same stories over and over and over again because they're already telling the same stories. For example, if we put a venture capital associate who only focuses on El Paso, Texas, from an El Paso, Texas fund, you're only going to hear about the things that matter to them and not potentially stories that are outside of that. So what we want to do is focus on, you're a hardcore fan of this city and this city's business environment. We're going to show you everything in this space, and we're going to tell the stories of everything here. We're not going to be a biased source at all.
So Eric, when can people look forward to this?
So the network's going to roll out over the next couple years here, and I don't think we have any intentions of stopping that. But if you're interested in the betas to see what those look like, The Lay of the Land is going to launch at the end of November with a trailer, and then the first week of December, I believe it's December 3rd, with their first episode. And you can go to layoftheland.fm to check that out. And in January, we're going to be launching When Pigs Fly. So if you want to subscribe to that feed, go to whenpigsfly.fm and you can check that out and get on the list.
Yeah, pay attention to our feed here. We'll let you know on the Upside feed when those shows are available. Those domains Eric listed off might be a redirect right now. Give us some time. But that is where those shows will live. And like we've said a couple of times now, if this is interesting to you and exciting to you, and you're in a different city across the country than what we just named, Cincinnati and Cleveland, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to see what it's like to maybe get something going in your city, if that's interesting to you. We'd love to hear what is interesting to you and go from there. So Eric, kudos, buddy, on getting this thing off the ground. Really exciting. We've been working on it for months. Trailers sound great. It's finally coming full circle.
Yeah, but we could do any of it without you, Jay. Honestly, the playbook that is being launched is all your work. It's the presentations that you've put together. It's the work that you've done to learn about Upside. So without you, none of this would have been possible. It just would have been an idea in an unanswered Slack channel.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, dear listener, on whether you think this idea makes sense. Think of us as our own company here that we usually talk to on the show. You can email us hello@upside.fm or tweet at us at upsidefm. Tell us if you think this is a good idea. Tell us if you think it's a bad idea. Tell us if you think there's something we can improve upon this idea. We'd love to hear about it, and we'll be talking to you next week.
That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's guest, so shoot us an email at hello@upside.fm or find us on Twitter at upsidefm. We'll be back here next week at the same time talking to another founder in our quest to find upside outside of Silicon Valley. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please email us or find us on Twitter and let us know. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That goes a long way in helping us spread the word and continue to help bring high-quality guests to the show. Eric and I decided there were a couple things we wanted to share with you at the end of the podcast, and so here we go. Eric Hornung and Jay Klaus are the founding parties of the Upside podcast. At the time of this recording, we do not own equity or other financial interest in the companies which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinion and do not reflect the opinions of Duff & Phelps LLC and its affiliates, Unreal Collective LLC and its affiliates, or any entity which employ us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. We have not considered your specific financial situation nor provided any investment advice on this show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Never mind, bro, that can't be matched. I'm lighting it on fire, used to run victory laps, and still I'm not even tired. It's all about the timing, yeah, that's what they say. Well, I'ma keep on rhyming, find a way.